Cancel culture feels like a modern concept, but its roots stretch deeply into history. In the Middle Ages, to be cancelled meant losing your place in society, your livelihood, and sometimes even your life. Societies relied heavily on informal methods to enforce conformity when legal systems were weak or non-existent. Shunning, public shaming, and exile were the tools of the time, and the consequences could be devastating. Imagine being cast out of your community, unable to trade, speak with others, or participate in everyday life. For many, this social death was worse than execution. In this video, we'll explore the tools of medieval cancellation, from Icelandic outlawry to ritual shaming like charivari, and the brutal exclusion of marginalized groups. We'll dive deep into real examples of those who were cancelled, how power shaped who could be targeted, and why these methods feel eerily familiar today. This is Raw History. Shunning was a widespread practice across medieval Europe. In Iceland, the Thane, a community assembly, meted out punishments like outlawry. A famous case from the Icelandic sagas is that of Grettir Asmundarson. Declared an outlaw in the 11th century for multiple offences, including manslaughter, Grettir became a pariah. As an outlaw, anyone could kill him without consequence. Cut off from all support, he spent 20 years in isolation before being hunted down and killed. Early Christian communities also relied on shunning to enforce discipline. Before the church gained state power in the late 4th century, heretics and apostates were cast out. For instance, the Council of Nicaea in 325 AD condemned Arianism, a belief that denied Christ's divinity. Without a formal mechanism to enforce this decision, those deemed heretical were shunned. This practice continued until Emperor Theodosius I issued the Edict of Thessalonica in 380 AD, making Nicene Christianity the official religion of the empire and granting church-state power to enforce its rulings. Shunning was particularly harsh because it deprived individuals of basic necessities. A person cast out of a medieval village could not buy food, find work, or even attend church. The isolation often led to despair and, in some cases, suicide. Public shaming took more theatrical forms, especially among commoners. One widespread practice was charivari, or rough music, which targeted those who defied social norms. In 14th century France, a man who married a widow much older than himself was subjected to nightly visits by villagers banging pots and pans outside his home. These parades mocked the couple and often escalated into physical attacks or vandalism. In England, the ducking stool was another common form of public humiliation, primarily used against women accused of scolding or gossiping. For example, Anne Carter, a woman from Leicestershire, was sentenced to the ducking stool in 1623 for being a common scold. Strapped into a chair, she was dunked into water repeatedly, her punishment witnessed and jeered at by a large crowd. Afterwards, her reputation was so damaged that she was forced to leave the village for good. Public shaming also involved physical symbols of disgrace. In some German towns, women accused of adultery were forced to wear a wooden yoke or carry a large rock through the streets. These punishments weren't just about the individual, they were designed to send a message to the whole community. Medieval society often excluded people for reasons beyond their control. Lepers, for example, underwent a ritual called separatio leprosorum. This ceremony symbolized their social death. A priest would declare the leper dead to the world, conduct a mock funeral, and then promptly banish them to a leper colony on the outskirts of town. One poignant example of this comes from France in 1321 during a wave of anti-leprosy hysteria. False accusations that lepers had poisoned wells led to mass executions and expulsions. Entire leper colonies were destroyed, and those who survived were left to wander the countryside, ostracized and destitute. Other marginalized groups like beggars and the disabled faced similar exclusion. In medieval Jewish communities, individuals who violated communal laws could be excommunicated. A Jewish merchant in 13th century Regensburg, for instance, was shunned for trading with Christians on the Sabbath. Excommunication not only cut him off from religious rituals, but also destroyed his livelihood, as he was no longer trusted by Jewish or Christian traders. Honor culture often tied shaming to violence. In Renaissance Italy, for example, a duel was the accepted way to resolve disputes over personal insults. In 1517, Giovanni Carafa, a Nepalesian nobleman, challenged a rival to a duel after being accused of dishonesty. Failing to respond to such accusations would have meant social ruin, not just for Giovanni, but for his entire family. Similarly, women accused of unchastity faced severe social consequences. In 15th century England, a woman named Marjorie Kemp endured public ridicule for claiming religious visions. Though she defended her chastity vigorously, accusations persisted, and she was repeatedly dragged before local courts. Her case illustrates how fragile a woman's reputation could be in medieval society. These instances highlight deep connection between honor, shame, and exclusion. To lose honor was to lose one's place in society, a fate that often prompted desperate measures to restore it. As with today's cancel culture, those in positions of power were often immune. Nobles who controlled resources could avoid the consequences of their actions as long as they maintained the loyalty of their dependents. In 12th century England, Ranulph de Ginon, Earl of Chester, was widely despised for his ruthless behaviour but remained untouchable because of his military power. By contrast, monks who broke their vows or courtiers who offended their lords were easily expelled as they lacked independent means of support. At the other end of the spectrum, marginalized groups like lepers, beggars, and women were easy targets for exclusion. Their lack of resources and social standing left them vulnerable to the harshest forms of social control. The mechanisms of cancellation in the Middle Ages, shunning, public shaming, and ritual humiliation were brutal but effective. They enforced societal norms and punished those who defied them. While today's cancel culture lacks the physical spectacle of medieval practices, its impact on reputation and livelihood can feel similarly devastating. The history of medieval cancellation reminds us of the enduring power of social exclusion. Whether through the ducking stool or a viral tweet, societies have found ways to punish those who deviate from the norm. The tools may have changed, but the impulse still remains the same. If you too are fascinated by the brutal and shocking ways that societies enforced conformity in the past, hit the like button and subscribe for more deep dives into history's darker and surprising corners. Let me know in the comments, what surprised you the most about medieval cancel culture? Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one.